If it were up to Russia, there will be no war. We do not want a war. But we will not let our interests be rudely trampled on and ignored.
Sergei Lavrov speaking there. And for more, we can speak to our chief foreign editor, Rob Parsons. Hello to you, Rob. Tell us, these talks between Emmanuel Macron and Vladimir Putin, is a breakthrough even possible?
Oh, it's highly unlikely. Everything's possible, of course, but it is highly unlikely. You know, things have already moved so far forward. And the perception in Moscow is that it's Washington that's pulling the shots here. That, you know, it's not... Europe has a role to play, sure, but it's not Europe that Russia sees as its prime interlocutor on what's happening with Ukraine at the moment, which doesn't mean that Emmanuel Macron cannot be an influence, that he cannot in some way try to shift the situation forward. But the notion that at this stage Emmanuel Macron is having this discussion with Vladimir Putin in order to change his mind is clearly not really realistic. But, you know, there is this possibility that Vladimir Putin will at least give his first reactions to the letters that he's received from Washington and also from NATO, in which they rejected the demands made by Russia on Ukraine and the withdrawal of weapons and troops from Eastern European countries that joined NATO in 1997 and afterwards. We don't know yet exactly what the response has been, although the first response from Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister, was largely negative, but not entirely so. But detail is something we're short on at the moment. So this is something I'm sure that Emmanuel Macron will be pushing on, trying to see if there are any areas there in which compromise can be reached.
And speaking about Emmanuel Macron, what does he get out of holding these talks with Vladimir Putin?
Well, look, you know, Emmanuel Macron, since he became president, has tried to hold out a hand to Russia. It hasn't, by and large, paid off very well. But, you know, he has made a point of, particularly now that France is the President of the European Union, to put forward the idea of Europe having a separate role, having a separate strategic interests. And part of that involves defining its own relationship with Russia. The opportunities to do so, however, are pretty limited, as Emmanuel Macron himself has realized in the years since 2017, when he first held that summit with Vladimir Putin at Versailles. You know, an attempt to try and drag Putin effectively into the European fold, to get Russia to think of itself as a European rather than a Eurasian power. And then the meeting in St. Petersburg a year after that at the Constantine Palace, and again after that at the French president's summer residence in Brégançon, talking again about a sort of strategic reset. It didn't go down particularly well with, it has to be said, France's European partners, in particular East European and Central partners. And therein, I think, lies one of the weaknesses. You know, Emmanuel Macron might have this idea of establishing a new sort of relationship with Russia, but to do it, he has to go with the other members of the European Union as well. Russia has been watching and seems not to believe that France is capable of doing that. At the same time, France has been disappointed with Russia across a whole spectrum of issues. You know, Ukraine obviously is one of them, the poisoning of Alexei Navalny and his subsequent imprisonment, and what's been happening in Africa as well. Increasingly, Russia is pushing on French interests in the Central African Republic, and more recently with Wagner in Mali.
Yeah, and I guess Vladimir Putin all too eager to possibly drive a wedge between France and its allies.
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much, Rob. Rob Parsons, France 24's chief foreign editor.